By the end of that summer, my sister's luxury SUV was gone. Her sponsorships had evaporated, and my parents were stopped at the ballroom doors and quietly escorted to their seats while more than a dozen relatives and a line of vendors looked on. I am 32, a marketing vice president in New York City, and I thought I understood family betrayal. I did not. What they did not know was that I was already building a calm, methodical response with receipts, legal footing, and witnesses. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, tell me where you are watching from. I want to hear your story. I am Samantha Carter. I run national campaigns for a living. Reputation, risk, message, discipline, boring documents that decide big outcomes. I live on the Upper West Side. Our wedding was booked at the Plaza because it is easy for my grandmother, Nana Rose, to reach. My family lives in Westchester. Nana Rose has a brownstone in Brooklyn that she has loved for over 50 years. That brownstone matters. I will get to that. Here is who I am in my family. I am the responsible one. The early train kid. The scholarship kid who paid her own way. I learned how to be useful and quiet. My younger sister Brielle learned how to be adored and rescued. If you know the responsible child versus golden child pattern, you already know the ending. But stay with me because the middle is where the truth lives. I am not perfect. I can be blunt. I can be controlling when I am scared. I have made terrible choices from loyalty. You will not hear me scream in this story. You will hear me breathe, gather, document, and decide. Plant 1. An email from the venue coordinator about 2 bridal suites reserved. I had requested one. That is not a typo, it is a decision. I replied politely and asked them to release the extra room. The polite reply back said my mother had confirmed 2 suites. Make a note of this. Email is a record, and later I will have the message headers and the vendor planning portal logs authenticated. Not bank logs, not anything secret, just standard vendor systems that show who changed what and when. Plant 2. A glossy binder left on my kitchen island like a gift. Sister ceremony in gold script on the cover. Inside a run of show that listed makeup for both brides, a moment called Sister Vows, and a note to the photographer in pink highlighter that said balance coverage so both sisters feel equally seen. My throat went cold. My mother called it cute. She said it was only for the photos. She said, you know how much Brielle loves you? You know how much this means to the family. Plant 3. An Instagram teaser from Brielle. A quick reel of 2 white garment bags sliding past the camera with a caption that read, 2 brides is better than 1. The comments were heart emojis and champagne glasses. I texted her to take it down. She replied with a laughing face and the word, chill. I screenshotted everything. Not to win the internet, to protect my life. I work in marketing. I believe in the power of a clean sentence and a clean spreadsheet. I also believe in grace. So when the first hairline cracks appeared, I did what many eldest daughters do. I smoothed them. I told myself it would be fine. Looking back now, fine was a promise I kept making to other people at my own expense. The geography of this story matters, so let me mark it clearly. Upper West Side apartment, the Plaza Ballroom, parents in Westchester, grandmother in Brooklyn. A life that looks like the map of a commuter rail, all destinations connected by habit and duty. The timing matters too. The first email was late winter. The binder was early spring. The teaser reel came right after. The money question surfaced a few weeks later. Christmas, as you will learn, is when the plan began. I did not know that yet. Tone check. I am speaking plainly now because plain language is a mercy in a foggy story. I will not exaggerate what happened. I do not need to. The truth told simply is heavy enough. Before we move on, I want you to know why the brownstone matters. Years ago, after my grandfather died, Nana Rose put my name on the deed and named me executor of her trust. There is a clause that locks down her assets if anyone tries to use her home or money to force family decisions. That clause will become a hinge in this story. I am planning that now so the payoff makes sense when we reach it. Final setup so you can track the players. Me, Samantha, 32 marketing vice president, the responsible one. David, my husband, steady and kind. Brielle, my younger sister, the golden one with a lifestyle feed and a talent for turning attention into oxygen. My parents who love a spectacle and call it tradition. Nana Rose, my anchor. Sarah, my maid of honor and an associate attorney with a talent for turning feelings into facts. Aunt Lydia, who keeps receipts without calling them that. Marcus, a friend who runs event security. Evan, my chief marketing officer who will start as a critic and end as a witness. That is the lay of the land. 3 planted hints. Clear names, clear places, clear stakes. Breathe with me. We are going to move from ordinary to impossible and then to inevitable. And we are going to do it calmly. Looking back now, the story did not start with a binder or an email. It started with me saying yes to 100 small asks that felt harmless at the time. I was the early train kid, the scholarship kid, the one who could be counted on. When my first bonus hit in my mid-20s, I took my parents to dinner and paid the bill with a shaky, proud hand. It felt like stepping into the adult circle. It also felt like a contract I did not read closely enough. In my family, usefulness was a love language. If you could fix a crisis, you were valued. If you caused a crisis, you were comforted. My sister Brielle learned how to be comforted. I learned how to be useful. I do not say that with bitterness. I say it as a fact, the way you might describe the weather you grew up in. The asks were small at first. A phone bill that needed to be covered just this once. A rent top-off because a collaboration payment was late. A dental bill that could not wait. I had a steady salary and health insurance and a calendar full of meetings that promised bigger things. I could help. So I did. Then the scale changed. When my total compensation crossed into the low six figures and kept climbing, the ask became a plan. $12,000 a month, just until after the holidays, my mother said with relief in her voice. A season, not a life sentence. That was the promise. Holidays came and went. The amount stayed. 24 months later, that monthly support alone had reached roughly $288,000. This is important. I'm not guessing. Even before I sat down with a friend who is a chief financial officer to build a spreadsheet, I kept tidy folders because tax season forces tidy. Receipts tell their own stories when you line them up by date. Looking back now, the pattern was as visible as a parade. Emergencies had good timing. Whenever I tried to dial back, something urgent erupted. A deposit for a new apartment Brielle had to secure, or she would lose the perfect light for filming. A rush trip to a content retreat she simply could not miss. A camera upgrade that would finally unlock the next tier of brand deals. I could hear the words in my father's voice. She is right on the edge, Sammy. Do not make her fall. I helped with bigger optics, too. A luxury SUV lease made sense, I was told, because image is everything in her space. The brand would see the value. I co-signed because there was a plan on paper and a timeline and promises about responsibility. I will get to that car later. For now, keep it in the background like a prop waiting for its scene. Meanwhile, I paid my own way. I put away money for retirement. I maxed out contributions because that is what a calm life requires in a city that eats the careless. I did not resent the helping. I resented that help was becoming identity. When I said no to a spontaneous trip or a cooter jacket, I was boring. When I said yes to a dental bill, I was a hero for a day. My parents loved pageantry. They loved the theater of effort. Brielle's social media felt to them like proof of modern success. They would scroll at the breakfast table and read captions out loud with pride. My career, they told me, was safe. Safe sounded like an insult in their mouth. Safe sounded like dull. I learned to translate. When they said safe, they meant invisible. Looking back now, there were bright flags that I treated like confetti. A centerpiece for a family dinner that cost more than a month of groceries when we were kids. A photo shoot planned for the same day as my quarterly business review because, and I quote, the light will not be this soft again until fall. The words bigger person were used like a spell to make my boundaries disappear. I was always the bigger person. It was assumed like gravity. I had my own milestones during those years. Promotions, product launches, teams that grew under my leadership. I flew to San Francisco and Boston and back to New York in the same week to pitch campaigns that would pay for other people's dreams and my own. The night I made vice president, I sat on the kitchen floor in my heels and ate pad thai from the carton and cried not from joy but from something more complicated. I knew that the next ask would be larger because my life had just expanded on paper. When David proposed, I felt that quiet, clean happiness you only get when a yes is uncomplicated. We decided on the plaza because it made my grandmother smile and because there is something honest about a place that does not need to be dressed up to be beautiful. We agreed on a budget that felt responsible. I sent calendar invites to my mother because I believed that structure would protect us from chaos. I believed a lot of things that were almost true. Looking back now, the day the binder appeared on my island did not come from nowhere. It arrived at the end of a road I had paved. A road of rescue. A road of explanations. A road of grace extended without limits and gratitude returned without cost. I'm not saying I was blameless. There is a way that competence becomes control. There is a way that planning can smother spontaneity. I own that. But competence should not be a trap. Planning should not be permission for theft. Here are the specific ways entitlement lived in our house. When Brielle missed a deadline, it was because the muse cannot be scheduled. When I needed quiet to finish a deck for a client, I was told to lighten up. When a brand sent her free products, we posted a boomerang and toasted with our free sparkling water. When I asked that she not open packages addressed to me, she laughed and said, "It is all family." When I said I needed a weekend to myself, my mother asked if I was angry, and then called Aunt Lydia to ask what was wrong with Samantha. Looking back now, even the compliments were costly. "You are so strong," my mother would say, and then ask for something heavy. "You are so organized," my father would say, and then hand me the mess. "You have such a big heart," Brielle would say, and then climb inside it like a house. Strength, organization, and heart are beautiful qualities. In a family without boundaries, they are also invitations. I do not tell you this to make you dislike them. I tell you this so you understand the math that set the stage. The financial math of months and transfers and favors. The emotional math of compliments that came with invoices. The math of a family system where one child was expected to keep the current moving while the other was expected to sparkle. That is not a crime. It is a dynamic. Dynamics unchecked become destiny. There was a moment that should have recalibrated me sooner. I booked a celebratory weekend for my parents at a small inn upstate as an anniversary gift. It cost less than a designer handbag and more than a fancy dinner. When I handed them the envelope, my mother smiled and then said, "Could we swap this for a family content trip to Montauk so Brielle can shoot?" She said it kindly. She said it like we were brainstorming. I said yes. Looking back now, that yes lives in a little museum in my head under a sign that says choices that told the future. Before the binder. Before the email about 2 bridal suites. Before the Instagram teaser. The pattern was set. I was funding a lifestyle and a story about our family where I played a role I did not audition for. The responsible one. The bigger person. The woman who could be trusted to hold the rope while everyone else climbed. This is important because when the betrayal comes, it will not be out of character. It will be the logical next step for people who believe they can count on you to keep carrying what does not belong to you. I am not angry as I say this. I am clear. Clarity is what you get when you stop editing your own memories to make them kinder than they were. Clarity is what you get when you line up receipts and remember the tone of voice attached to them. Clarity is what makes room for a decision that does not look like you. Looking back now, I wish I had seen sooner that love and leverage had gotten tangled in our house. I wish I had not measured my worth in invoices paid and crises solved. But if I had learned that earlier, there would not be a story to tell you now or a lesson I can offer with both hands open. The lesson will become obvious soon. Boundaries spoken early save everyone from harsher endings. I did not speak them early, so the ending had to be louder. We are not there yet. First, the discovery. I used to think betrayal arrived like a thunderclap. In my family, it came as breadcrumbs. Breadcrumb 1, the venue email. "We have reserved both bridal suites as requested." I had requested one. I replied kindly. "Please release the second suite." The coordinator's response was careful and neutral. "Your mother confirmed 2 suites through the vendor planning portal." That line mattered. Not a bank system, not anything secret. A standard portal with change logs that track who adjusted what and when. I did not argue. I saved the messages and the headers. I wrote down the exact time. Breadcrumb 2. The binder labeled Sister Ceremony. I opened to the run of show and red makeup for both brides' sister vows, and a pink note to the photographer that said balance coverage so both sisters feel equally seen. I called my mother. She laughed like I was being dramatic and said it was just for photos. She said, "You know how much Brielle loves you. You know how much this means to the family." I did not agree. I also did not fight. I photographed every page and placed the binder back where I found it. The photos went into a folder called Wedding Facts. Breadcrumb 3. The porch. I stopped by my parents' house on the way to a client dinner and paused when I heard my mother's voice through the open window. "Make sure the sponsorship contract includes both girls on the step and repeat. Yes, the ring will be on Samantha, but Brielle's handle will drive engagement. Yes, we can deliver a morning show segment." I stood very still on the doormat, staring at a winter wreath, my hand on the bell, the cold moving through my coat. I did not ring. I walked back to my car and breathed until my heartbeat stopped pounding in my hands. Breadcrumb 4. Aunt Lydia. She texted the next morning. "Can you talk?" She came to my apartment with tea and a phone that buzzed with conscience. She scrolled to the family group chat from Christmas Eve. "Surprise! We are doing 2 brides. It will be historic. Sponsors will love the sister angle." There was a screenshot of a custom order for 2 gowns, similar silhouettes. Timestamped. Paid. "Do you see the arc now? Not a misunderstanding, a plan. Breadcrumb 5. Brielle's reel. 2 white garment bags and the caption, 2 brides is better than 1. The comments were heart emojis and champagne flutes. I texted her, please take it down. She replied with a laughing face and the word chill. I screenshotted the post, the comments, and our messages, then I made a copy to a backup drive. I work in reputation for a living. Redundancy is love. Breadcrumb 6. The bank alert. An email about unusual activity in the wedding account. A large transfer out to a payee name I did not recognize described generically as event services. I took the train downtown and sat with a banker who spoke in careful phrases. We can initiate an ACH recall if a transfer was unauthorized. Outcomes depend on the receiving bank and the timing. We can also place a temporary hold on related transfers while we investigate. No promises. Document everything. I nodded. Calm is a strategy. I filed the dispute, printed the form, and added it to my growing folder. This is important. I did not claim a guarantee. I recorded a process beginning. Breadcrumb 7. The coordinator called to verify a few details she said had been changed. The run of show now included a moment called Sister Vows and a processional line with 2 brides. I asked who made those changes. She read the username on file. It was my mother's email, which I had authorized for a single call months earlier when I was in a flight delay. The portal logs listed date and timestamps next to each edit. I asked for a copy of the activity report. She said she would send what she could. She sounded relieved to be speaking with me directly. The shift from suspicion to certainty is a quiet snap. It happened for me when all the separate pieces clicked into a single sentence that no longer needed commas. My wedding had been rewired into a public relations stunt featuring 2 brides. The money was moving to support that stunt. The social posts were laying the runway. The venue had been directed to treat the plan as policy. I called Sarah, my maid of honor, who is also an associate attorney. We have to separate feelings from facts, she said. Bring everything to my place. We laid it out on our dining table. Emails with headers and the vendor portal change log showing who adjusted the run of show. Screenshots of the reel and the caption, 2 brides is better than 1. The family group chat from Christmas with the words, it will be historic. The bank notice and the dispute forms. A spreadsheet from my friend who is a chief financial officer that totaled what I had contributed over the past few years. Monthly support of around $12,000, which over 2 years was roughly $288,000. Additional gifts, rent top-offs, and credit covers that brought our estimate near $420,000. Deposits across vendors that would in total approach around $180,000 by the time the wedding arrived. We flagged one transfer in the high 5 figures that had already moved. We highlighted every timestamp and circled every place where my authorization was missing. I wanted to scream. I did not. I asked better questions. Who benefits? Who has access? What are the points of control? Sarah took notes in tidy columns. We can authenticate the headers and the portal log through an independent IT specialist, she said. Not bank systems. Not anything behind a court order. Just the records we already have. We can ask the bank to continue the recall process and, where possible, freeze any funds in motion while they investigate. Some reversals may happen, some may not. We will not promise outcomes we do not control. I felt my shoulders drop an inch. Precision is a kind of kindness. Complicity is hard to look at. It was not just my mother and Brielle, it was the venue's willingness to proceed on someone else's instruction because that someone sounded competent. It was the morning show producer who booked a segment built on soft facts and tears. It was me, too, for making it easy to access the planning portal by sharing my login during a delay because it felt simpler in the moment. I do not need a villain with a cape when everyday convenience will do. I kept moving. I called the venue and calmly reasserted that there was only 1 bride. I asked that all changes be locked to my account, that all vendor communications be routed to me, and that security be included in the run of show to handle any unauthorized attempts to alter the program. The coordinator exhaled like she had been holding her breath for weeks. Then, because I believe in sunlight, I sent my parents a direct message with 3 attachments. The binder pages that said Sister Vows. The portal log showing my mother's username attached to edits. The bank dispute form stamped Received. I wrote one sentence. There is confusion here and it ends today. My father texted back 10 minutes later. Be the bigger person. Family is family. My mother wrote, you do not understand how this will help Brielle. Brielle wrote, this is content, relax. The words did what I needed them to do. They put tone in writing. There was one more breadcrumb and it arrived as a knock. Aunt Lydia again. She had a voice memo she had recorded by accident during Christmas Eve cleanup. My mother explaining to a cousin that the plan had started the moment I announced my engagement. Sponsors love sisters, she said. The tears will play. The dress will look better twice. She laughed in the background. The sound made the room tilt. I did not need the memo for court. I needed it for myself to end the temptation to negotiate with a fantasy of who my mother might become if I said the right words. By now, the path was visible. A public show had been built on my event. Money was being repositioned to support that show. The story had been seeded online and off. The timeline was not an accident. It was a campaign calendar. And if there is one thing I know how to do after a decade in marketing, it is how to unwind a campaign calmly while leaving a record you can defend. Two final clarifications in this discovery phase because precision keeps this story honest. First, I did not post about this on LinkedIn. I kept my workplace channels clean. The only thing that moved at work was an internal memo on personal boundaries and external risk, and that came later. Second, when I talk about forensics, I mean exactly this. Email headers preserved intact. Vendor planning portal logs exported correctly. Screenshots with visible timestamps and URLs. No bank logins shared. No secrets breached. Just the kind of documentation any careful adult can gather with patience and a clear head. Certainty is a quiet feeling. It arrived the moment I placed the last printout on Sarah's table and saw the line of breadcrumbs resolve into a single road. I had enough. Enough facts, enough timestamps, enough evidence to stop pleading and start preparing. The next part is not anger. It is awakening. Awakening did not arrive with fireworks. It arrived with a folder, a teacup, and a sentence that made everything align. First layer, the surface betrayal. My wedding had been quietly recoded into a public relations stunt with two brides. That was no longer a suspicion. It was written in a run of show, echoed in a caption, and reinforced by edits inside a vendor planning portal that tracks who changed what and when. Those facts stood on their own. No courtroom rhetoric required, no secret bank logs, just ordinary systems doing what they do best, keeping history. Second layer, the deeper conspiracy. I took the subway to Brooklyn and sat at Nana Rose's kitchen table. Earl Grey, lemon slice, light slanting across an old wooden floor. She listened without interrupting. Then she slid a manila folder toward me. Years ago, after your grandfather died, we added your name to the deed and made you executor of my trust, she said, repeating what I already knew in outline. Read the clause again. I read. Clear language. If anyone attempts to leverage her home or assets to force family outcomes, the trust locks down. No debate, no drama. A simple switch that flips to protect an elder from coercion. Here is where the conspiracy sharpened. In the Christmas thread, Aunt Lydia had shown me there was a cheerful aside about using Nana's brownstone as a heritage backdrop for bridal portraits. The message sounded harmless to anyone outside our family. Inside, it was a lever. A way to turn her house into a bargaining chip. If you frame those photos here, the message said, between them I not tween. Between the lines, you will share the stage out there. Once I saw it, I could not unsee it. Third layer, pattern recognition. I laid the breadcrumbs side by side in my mind and watched them resolve into a road. The two bridal suites, the binder labeled Sister Ceremony, the porch conversation about sponsors and a morning show, the real caption that said, 2 brides is better than 1. The portal log with my mother's username beside edits that added sister vows. The bank's message about a transfer and the careful explanation that a recall is a process, not a promise. Christmas was not a holiday, it was a kickoff. That is when the calm took over. Calm is not passive. Calm is a choice to hold the steering wheel with both hands and drive the speed limit while everyone else weaves. What they did not know was that I had already begun that kind of calm. I called Sarah. Bring everything she said. We sat at her dining table with laptops and a legal pad. We separated feelings from facts. We listed access points, the vendor portal, the shared planning email, the wedding account. We listed allies, the venue coordinator who sounded relieved when I called the banker who documented the recall process, the IT specialist we would hire to authenticate email headers and export the portal activity report correctly. This is important. Authentication would cover what we already possessed. Email headers, portal logs, screenshots with visible timestamps and links. Nothing beyond ordinary adult paperwork. Nothing that required a subpoena. Precision matters because precision survives scrutiny. I kept the brownstone folder on top of the stack. It was not a weapon. It was a boundary written before I needed it. Nana poured more tea. The radiator hissed like a quiet warning. Outside, winter light made the sky look blank and endless. I felt the sensory overload arrive in a wave. The rim of the teacup was too smooth, my hands were too hot. The room felt too bright. I pressed my palm flat on the table and focused on one sentence printed in black. Assets lock in the face of coercion. I did not need to raise my voice, the clause already had one. On my way home, I stopped by the spare room at Nana's and checked my dress. The satin flashed white when I unzipped the garment bag. The cedar in the wardrobe smelled like a forest that had learned patience. I tucked a tiny tracker into an inner seam, the kind you buy in an ordinary store, and I wrote down the serial number. Not because I planned a chase, because I planned to keep custody simple. I moved the dress to a safe deposit box the next morning and added an insurance rider. Quiet steps. Boring steps. Boring is powerful. Back in my apartment, I wrote the simplest version of the truth I could stand to say aloud. Surface betrayal. My mother and sister attempted to refit my wedding into a two-bride show. Deeper conspiracy. They promised access and optics to outsiders and used my grandmother's home as implied leverage. Pattern recognition. The timeline stretched from Christmas to the present and matched a campaign calendar, not a family celebration. I read those lines out loud until they felt like facts instead of accusations. Then I made 2 calls. First to the venue. I confirmed there was only one bride and asked that all changes be locked to my account. I requested the activity report for the portal and added security to the run of show to manage any unauthorized attempts to alter the program on the day. The coordinator's exhale sounded like relief finally given permission to exist. Second to the bank. I confirmed the dispute filings and asked for written status updates as the recall moved through investigation. The banker repeated what she had said before. Some funds may come back, some may be held, outcomes depend on timing and the receiving bank. I thanked her and wrote the words "some" and "may" in my notebook in large, tidy letters. Hope is not a plan. Process is. I did not post a single sentence on LinkedIn. I did not subtweet. I did not hint. I sent a short, private message to my parents with attachments. A snapshot of the sister ceremony schedule. A screenshot of the portal log that showed edits under my mother's username. A copy of the dispute form stamped received. One sentence. This ends today. My father replied with, "Be the bigger person." My mother wrote, "You do not understand how this will help your sister." Brielle sent a laughing emoji and wrote, "It is content, relax." Their words did what I needed. They put tone in writing next to facts. That night I slept. Not well. Enough. In the morning I woke into a new kind of quiet. Not the quiet of defeat, the quiet of preparation. I stood at the window with coffee and watched the city move. Buses, dog walkers, a kid with a cello case larger than his torso. Life did not care about my ceremony. Life kept time. That realization released me from the urge to stage a dramatic showdown. I did not need a showdown. I needed a file. Before I closed the folder, I added one page titled Lessons for Later. 1. Do not share logins even for convenience. 2. Calls during flight delays can wait. 3. If someone calls you safe like it is an insult, translate it as solid and keep going. 4. If a boundary requires an audience to be respected, it was never a boundary. It was a plea. Reading those lines, I felt something I had not felt since the binder appeared. Agency. Not the noisy kind, the kind that moves furniture when a room feels wrong. Here is the hinge between discovery and action. I finally believed myself. That is the revelation most of us underestimate. Believing your own notes. Believing your own timestamps. Believing your own memory when it stops editing itself to keep everyone comfortable. Once I believed myself, the next part wrote itself. Not rage, not spectacle. A series of calm phone calls and documented steps that would reset the day back to what it was always meant to be. We were done gathering. The breadcrumbs had become a map. The folder had become a plan. The plan would become consequences. And all of it would happen without a raised voice. Calm is a plan. I wrote it down step by step. Step 1. Lock access. I opened new bank subaccounts. I enabled two-factor on every vendor portal. I changed every password. I removed shared logins. No drama, just hygiene. Step 2. Preserve proof. I exported the vendor planning portal activity report. It showed edits under my mother's username with dates and times. I saved raw email files with full headers. I saved screenshots with visible timestamps and links. I kept originals and made 2 backups. This is important. I only authenticated what I already owned. No bank logs, no secret systems. Step 3. Bank process. I filed formal disputes on the questionable transfers. I initiated ACH recall requests where timing allowed. The banker was clear. Some funds may return. Some may be held during investigation. Some may not come back. I wrote that down in plain words. Process, not promises. Step 4. Vendors. I notified each vendor in writing. One bride, communications route through me only. I added a short confidentiality addendum. I asked the coordinator to lock change permissions to my account. She agreed and confirmed an email. Step 5. Security. I hired Marcus. We added a QR code check-in at the ballroom doors. We briefed staff. Anyone attempting to alter the program would be seated as a guest or escorted out if disruptive. Simple, documented. Step 6. Legal. Sarah referred me to a consumer rights attorney. We built a concise letter, no threats, only request backed by exhibits. Exhibit A, bank dispute filings and recall acknowledgments. Exhibit B, authenticated email headers showing vendor direction about 2 brides. Exhibit C, the portal activity report listing edits to add sister vows. Exhibit D, screenshots of the double bride posts. Exhibit E, a spreadsheet from a chief financial officer friend tallying about 2 to 3 years of support at roughly $420,000, including around $12,000 per month over 2 years, and wedding deposits approaching $180,000. Exhibit F, the trust clause that locks assets in the face of coercion. The letter asks them to stop interfering with contracted services, to stop accessing accounts without authorization, and to stop public insinuations. Boring, precise, powerful. Step 7. Credit hygiene. I placed fraud alerts with the 3 major bureaus. I closed dormant joint access points. I removed secondary cards I had issued. I documented every closure. Step 8. The car. Months earlier, I had co-signed a Bentley Bentayga worth roughly $300,000 to help Brielle's optics. Late payments had accumulated. I notified the lender and insurer of disputes around misuse and of my intent not to insure a vehicle I did not control. The lender acted on their policy based on payment default, not my feelings. They scheduled repossession. I could not unco-sign. I could insist the contract be honored or enforced. That was enough. Step 9. Public guardrail. I wrote a neutral statement to post the morning of the wedding at 8 o'clock. Today is my wedding day. There is only one bride. Vendors have correct instructions. Unauthorized attempts to alter the program will be handled by security, short, civil, clear. Step 10. Work boundaries. I did not post on LinkedIn. I did not subtweet. I prepared a private internal memo for my team about personal boundaries and external risk. It was policy, not gossip. What they did not know was that every step generated a document. Every document carried a date. Dates turn emotion into decisions. Wedding morning, 8 o'clock, I posted the statement, then I turned off notifications. The plaza hummed with quiet. Floral's soft light calm staff. Marcus checked radios. Sarah walked the run of show. The officiant practiced a single line. We are here to celebrate Samantha and David. Only Samantha and David. My parents arrived with Brielle in a white dress and a photographer in tow. Marcus met them at the ballroom doors. He scanned their QR codes. He explained the policy. Guests are welcome. Program roles are locked. My mother said family is family. Be the bigger person. My father smiled like a shortcut. Brielle said it is content. Relax. Marcus did not raise his voice. He gestured to 2 ushers. They escorted my parents to their seats. Brielle sat 2 rows back. The photographer was repositioned to cover the event, not a stunt. Calm carried the room. I took the microphone before the processional. Thank you for being here. There is only one bride today. Anyone not invited to participate in the ceremony will enjoy the celebration from their seat. Any attempt to disrupt will be handled quietly. The room stilled. Then the day moved forward. The ceremony was clean and beautiful. No sister vows, no divided attention. The officiant said the line as planned. Only Samantha and David. We said our vows. The applause sounded like relief. That evening, the attorney letter went out by email and certified mail. It requested that the interference stop, that access stop, that insinuation stop. It cited exhibits. It referenced the trust clause. It was not angry, it was clear. The bank investigations progressed. Some transfers reversed. Others were frozen pending outcome. A few were too late to recall. The written status updates reflected each result. I filed them in the folder. The lender repossessed the Bentley based on payment default. The insurer recorded the policy change and my notice. Co-signers cannot evaporate. They can demand the contract be respected. The tow truck did not feel like victory. It felt like math. Brands that had sniffed around the sister angle paused or backed away. Risk teams dislike fog. The morning show did not book a follow-up. The story had lost its arc when the facts arrived. At work, nothing spilled onto public channels. Evan read my internal memo. He knocked on my door. "You did not make a scene," he said. "You made a record. Keep that template." I nodded. Template is my language. My parents called from blocked numbers. Offers disguised as ultimatums. Undo the letter and we can fix this. I declined. I repeated one sentence. Boundaries are not negotiations. Brielle posted a few vague captions. They went nowhere. Receipts travel farther than hints. Immediate aftermath. My parents were seated guests at my wedding, not co-producers. Brielle's car was gone. Her credit took a predictable hit. Sponsors cooled. The group chat went quiet. The facts filled the silence. 6 months later, we moved to Connecticut to be closer to Nana Rose. She rented a bright place with an elevator. We kept Sundays open. Bagels, coffee, friends around a long table. Most are women who lead teams and have learned to say no without apology. We trade scripts. We pass the salt and the courage. My career stayed steady. If anything, my reputation strengthened. Calm documented boundaries read as competence in my field. People began asking for the checklist. I shared it. Privately, kindly. Do I miss my parents and my sister? I miss the version I tried to believe in. I do not miss the role I played to keep that version alive. Peace has a sound. It is your own footsteps in your own home. It is the click of a folder closing after the final status update arrives. Here's the simple lesson. Sacrifice without limits becomes supply. Love without respect becomes leverage. Hope without paperwork becomes a trap. Start a folder with your name on it. Put facts inside. Calm is not passive. Calm is power on paper. Have you ever chosen self-respect over family harmony? What did it cost? What did it save? Tell me where you are watching from. If this helps, subscribe for more stories where strategy meets heart and boundaries hold.